Hello, and welcome to this presentation on transportation modes. My name is Kyle Herrick, and I'll be taking you through this presentation today. When selecting a mode of transportation, it's important to understand whether the mode will accomplish the task of getting from point A to point B, but also what is the cost, risks, and special considerations in doing so. As you can see by this picture, it's fairly certain the mode of transportation will reach its final destination. However, I have a feeling that the cargo, or in this case the passenger, will not arrive in the optimum condition. With our presentation today, we will give an overview of four of the modes of transportation, which will include road, rail, air, and sea, also known as maritime. We will look at some of the legal and regulatory issues that can arise when choosing a transportation mode, as well as some of the risks and liabilities associated with them. A comparison chart of the transportation modes will be reviewed, and we will conclude the presentation with some final thoughts and allow time for questions at the end. The final slide will also include a list of references should the audience like to dive deeper into the subject material. Our first mode of transportation up for review is road. Essentially, road transportation is the movement of goods or passengers over a network of roads. It's a fairly simple concept and one that we see every day. Cars take us to work, trucks pull trailers with cargo, and even bicycles can be used by messenger or courier services. One of the key takeaways from road transportation is the flexibility that it offers. There are virtually no limitations on scheduling the use of roads, and in most developed countries the infrastructure is well laid out and plentiful. Generally, the cost is low to moderate to ship items, though maintenance costs for things like fleet vehicles and the roads themselves can be high. The trucking industry has benefited substantially from containerization as well. A couple of key drawbacks for road transportation center on long distances. Due to the time road travel can take, oftentimes longer distances have to include time for truck drivers to sleep. And the longer the shipment is in transit, the greater the opportunity for damage that can occur. Rail transportation is the use of wheeled vehicles that are bound to their path, which tends to be fixed. Rail transportation has a significant advantage over its road and air counterparts, as it can haul extreme weight capacities over land. With deregulation of this industry, rail has become very competitive and has a good profitability in the industry, which helps drive growth. Like road transportation, it too has benefited from containerization. However, some drawbacks include the fact that rail lines can become damaged, or when the train experiences mechanical failure, your shipment will come to a complete halt. Rail, in many cases, is also dependent upon intermodal transport, as rail lines do not have the expansive network that other modes do. Air transport is the movement of goods or people across land and sea through the use of flight. Although it is a relatively young mode of transport, it is rapidly expanding and has become a truly viable option. Air transport offers strong flexibility and is clearly the fastest mode of transport, with the ability to ship items across the globe in less than 24 hours. With that speed, however, comes one of its biggest drawbacks, in that air transport is associated with higher costs. Also, inclement weather can prevent air transport from occurring entirely. And because of the nature of aircraft needing large spaces to land and take off, they're bound to airports, which often require intermodal support to help shipments reach their final destination. Moving on to sea transport, also known as maritime transport, it is the use of vessels to transport goods across oceans and waterways. When traveling from a global perspective, sea transport offers the greatest ability to move large amounts of freight across great distances, and it does so at a very low cost across the board. Oftentimes, consignment opportunities are also available for shippers with smaller loads to help save funds there. Sea transport is also a big participant in moving large, heavy freight, such as steel or large oil shipments across the globe. Some concerns related to sea transport include the inability to track shipments between ports, and the slow movement of vessels, which can be amplified by severe weather at sea. When choosing a mode of transport, it's important to consider some of the legal and regulatory issues that may impact your shipment. For example, The shipment of hazardous materials is a big one. Characteristics such as flammable, explosive, corrosive, oxidizing, radioactive, or toxic have special handling requirements. There are some instances where these materials cannot go by way of a particular option for transport, so others have to be considered. Accurate documentation is also recommended, and in some cases, such as international transport, it is required. Declaring exactly what is contained is a must, or it can lead to severe penalties, detainment of the shipment, or even its destruction, especially when traveling internationally. Certain shipments can also carry liabilities and require insurance to help contain those risks. For example, the risk and cost of cleanup for environmental hazards should a spill occur as the result of the shipment. And of course, considering international trade agreements is a must. Knowing where you can and cannot send particular products and in what conditions they may be sent should be known. In addition, any tariffs or taxes that are required when crossing borders is a key takeaway. There are many other risks outside of the simple legal considerations. Take, for example, with sea transport and the risk of piracy, especially in areas around the African coast such as Somalia, where piracy has become a way of life. Failure to protect and insure these shipments can result in the loss of product and massive ransoms just to get the crew of the transport company to be released. Exposure to environmental and health hazards along the way can also occur when shipping hazardous materials, so properly trained workers are a must. And considering the mode of transport and how your shipment will hold up in the transport process is an important factor. Understanding the number of impacts, shocks, and environmental exposure that your shipment will be subjected to is important to understand whether the packaging will hold up in the process. It is also necessary to consider the exposure to theft or to product loss that can occur as the result of your choice in shipment mode. Semi-trucks on the road are at a greater risk for theft than, say, a barge at sea, and airports also tend to have a higher level of security than, say, a rest stop on the highway. Here we have a matrix comparing and contrasting some of the features of each mode of transport. We won't discuss the whole matrix, but we'll touch on a couple of the modes. With road transport, key strengths include flexibility and its ability to complete most shipments without the help of intermodal transport. Drawbacks, however, include limitations on the amount of freight that can be shipped and longer distances increasing delivery times. Overall, the cost would be rated as moderate, and its specific advantage over the modes ties back to the fact that road transport can take most products to their final destination, rather than relying upon additional modes of transport. Looking at air transport, it is clearly the fastest option and is suitable for sensitive shipments. However, its high costs and necessity on secondary modes of transport are some of the drawbacks. Again, its key takeaway over the other modes is its fast option for delivery of goods. Comparing and contrasting the modes in this method is a good starting point when trying to decide which mode fits your shipment best. Laying out this matrix is definitely a helpful tool. And now we'll conclude our presentation today. We've looked at the basics of each mode of transport, including features such as shipment speeds, their costs, and the flexibility that each mode offers. We've also discussed additional considerations as they can relate to legal and regulatory requirements, such as the shipment of hazardous materials, as well as the risks associated with things like damage, potential criminal issues, and areas for safety of the shipment. Understanding those risks while comparing the modes is important and should always be part of the overall contrasting process. It's important to look at everything across the board when deciding what the best mode of transport is for your shipment. Thank you for taking the time to view this presentation with me. Now that we have concluded, this would be the most appropriate time for questions to be asked. If you're watching this presentation in its recorded form, you can find my contact information at the bottom of the slide, which will allow you to submit your questions through email. Again, thank you for your time, and I hope this presentation has been helpful for you.